Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is U.S. Immigration Attorney Hardam Tripathi from Trip Law. Today we're going to discuss a very important topic as it relates to you as an E2 investor, but having a spouse who may be a derivative beneficiary. So bringing your loved ones with you from that E2 treaty country and ultimately bringing them to the States as a derivative beneficiary. So before we jump in, if this is your first time viewing our channel, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and the like button so we can continue to make more videos to ultimately benefit you and educate the public regarding all things immigration law and policy. So let's jump right in. My name is Attorney Tripathi. I'm a U.S. immigration attorney here at Trip Law, and we really want to thank you so much for listening in today. Today we're going to delve into such a unique area of E2 visas. It's going to be what's called the E2 derivative beneficiary for your spouse process, right? But before we even get into the process, which we'll make other videos about, we want to give you a template, something that you can follow and learn from to ultimately bring your spouse, whether he or she would like to come over as a E2 derivative beneficiary. We think it's very important here in our law practice that we ultimately give them the same benefits and the same rights that you were afforded as an E2 applicant. And so USCIS is also going to allow your spouse, when you're from an E2 treaty-based nation, to ultimately come to these great United States of America. And by doing so, you're going to have that wonderful opportunity to bring your spouse, your minor children who are under the age of 21 and unmarried. They can also come. But this video is going to particularly focus on your spouse, he or she who is trying to come here based on your application as the primary applicant. Well, your derivative beneficiary spouse will be the one who's getting that EAD, that employment authorization document, that work permit, so you can legally work here in these great United States of America, pay those taxes, and ultimately create a better life for you and your family. So let's jump right in. So ultimately, when we're filing these applications for the E2 applicant, what we like to do is also help the spouse. The spouse is ultimately the familial factor of it all, right? They're the ones who are also coming to this great nation, and they're also providing value to this country. And ultimately, what you want to do when you're applying to USCIS is you really want to make sure that you have the perfect template when you're applying for that EAD, when you're applying for the work permit. The work permit is very important because you, as that business owner who are coming over here to these these great United States of America, what will end up happening is you will have your job, but your wife or your husband may have to then get a work permit to ultimately work in the USA and ultimately also have an opportunity to pay those taxes and get that ITIN number and all of that, right? So what's really important is you make sure you create a very strong application. That's something we do here at Trip Law. We want to make sure that you and your spouse as well also has the best chance moving forward. So what this video is going to be about today is going to be about how can we, as Trip Law and your firm, get your spouse over here to these great United States of America and ultimately get that EAD. But furthermore, how are you going to create a template? How are you going to get a response? This is knowledge we are providing you. This isn't legal advice. It's just for informational purposes only. You can contact our office at 863-370-2427 or at info@trip-law.com to get further information. But what's actually very important is that your spouse does need to get a work permit. Your spouse will be joining you on this journey to obtain that American dream and get that E2 visa based on your treaty nation, right? And you're doing this based on business. So ultimately, you do want to make sure you have a proven track record when you're in front of USCIS or the State Department at the time when you're giving these interviews, right? So ultimately, what's very important is that the EAD goes through USCIS. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the example of kind of how do you draft a derivative spouse beneficiary EAD, employment authorization document, work permit, aka ultimately how do you do that? So we're going to jump right in now. So basically what we do is when our clients come in, we've had a couple nationals from the great country of Mexico. We've had clients from Canada. We've had clients from various E2 countries like United Kingdom and things of that nature, South Africa even. And one thing is always consistent. Every E2 applicant that applies always wants their spouse to also get the same benefits. And that's obviously something that is respectful, right? It's something that's respectable. If you're coming here, you want your partner to also be here with you. You can't live the American dream yourself. There's always a strong woman or a man behind you that is going to create that sort of support system that's going to make you successful here in these great United States. So one big thing that we've noticed here at our firm is this is the most critical component of our actual practice. What we've noticed is that once we get the EAD, once we get that work permit, guns blazing, we're ready to go for our client. However, the derivative beneficiary spouse always has rights as well based on the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act. And so one big thing that we would like to do for you, if you ever decide to come visit us, and when you decide to come visit us, one big thing that we always recommend is that always get that derivative spouse EAD. The way we do it is we usually put the date on the top left-hand corner of the letter. We add this as a separate attachment to the actual embassy or consulate where you'll be giving your interview at. And ultimately what we do is we list it ultimately on the page, either to USCIS or to the embassy, wherever, depending on your case situation, however it may be. And what we'll do is we'll put your address on top. Then after that, it's going to be regarding your I-765 application. There's going to be some videos on that here in the near future, but we're going to be talking about the I-765 work application. That is the work permit. That is basically an application for employment authorization, aka your EAD, employment authorization document, aka your work permit. So what's really interesting is once we put that there and we put your name, so for example, we'll put applicant and we'll say it's like Jane Doe, right? And we'll put that in there. And then we'll say, dear sir or madam, or we'll say to whom it may concern, or to the government. And what we'll do is we'll say, please find enclosed within your application the application for EAD for Miss Jane Doe. And then what we'll do is we'll say that she is the E2 derivative beneficiary spouse of Mr. or Mrs., depending on what it may be. We'll put that person's name. So in case of Jane Doe, we will say, okay, well, this is the E2 derivative spouse of Mr. John Doe. And at that point, that's the person who's applying. You as the John Doe are applying ultimately based on your treaty-based nation regarding your E2 visa. You're ultimately going to apply. And it's going to involve the status of, and then we're going to put your corporation or your LLC's name on there. And then we go right into it. So this is kind of like a double-faceted video. What we're also going to do is give you like a checklist, a minor checklist. We'll give you more once you come into our office and we have a discussion based on your experience, your circumstances. But what's really important is this checklist is going to serve as a skeleton. It's kind of like a guideline of what to present to the government. And so what we're going to do for you is we're going to say that the following documents are provided, okay, in support of this application. And then we bullet point it all the way down. So what will happen to you, sir, or you, ma'am, listening in right now, is that you are going to have that wonderful opportunity of having a logical, methodical method going forward. And so ultimately, you're going to have the Form I-765. That's going to be done completely by our firm. We'll work with you on it. We'll get your background history and all that. We'll complete that form for you as a service. And on top of that, you're going to have a filing fee that the government keeps. And filing fees do change as the government decides to change their filing fee structures. So that will be something we will discuss in our consultation. After that, we're also going to attach 2 photographs. These are like passport-style photos. And on the back of it, you need to put it in a felt pen or in pencil. This is a very unique thing because if you do not do that correctly, you may get rejected. So there's all these little rules within immigration law that are very important components of your case that you do not want to risk or jeopardize based on your circumstances. So what's really interesting is we usually attach those passport-style photos, those 2 photographs of either you, Miss Jane Doe, as the derivative beneficiary of the E2 while you're applying for that work permit. And then we're also going to put with it the I-765 form as well, which is very important. You got to have those 2 in conjunction to with each other. Furthermore, what's going to be very important for y'all listening in right now is you're going to have a copy of your current passport. Your passport is a very integral part of your application. You're going to want to make sure that we have every single page. See, a lot of the times mistakes are made by those who apply by themselves without counsel or legal representation. What ends up happening is people will submit just maybe one page of their passport, the one with your face and with the biographical data and all that, but that's not going to be okay. We need to provide the entirety of the actual passport, just to kind of making sure we're dotting our I's, crossing our T's, making sure we're doing a good job and providing the government in its entirety your passport. That is very important. Once the copy of your passport is in there, you get to keep the original, but the copy does go to the government. You're also going to include your E2 derivative visa. In that case, if you already had the visa by then, you're going to include that to get the work permit, right? Because in order to get the work permit, you have to have that visa as well. And there's also concurrent filings as well we can do. And you're also going to have to show what's called an I-94. An I-94 is like travel history. There's going to be a separate video on that. And we will show you exactly how to get that. But rather, if you have an attorney, we will do it for you. That's one less headache you have to deal with. You are hardworking people. You're working hard to make ends meet. You want to love and go home to your family. At the end of all of that, you don't want to look up an I-94. So that's what we'll do for you here at Trip Law. And what we're going to do is make sure we get that I-94 history. That I-94 history, what is an I-94, you may ask, by the way? That's basically your travel history. It's kind of what the government kind of uses to track your movements in and out of the country. It will literally give you a breakdown of when you entered the country at the airport that you entered at. It will also give you an idea of kind of what goes on when you're traveling in and out of the country. How many days did you stay here? And it's all done based on your passport number, based on your date of birth, the country of origin. All these things are a key component in that, and it's very important. We want to make sure we have that I-94, and we want to show that you have a valid E2 status. Because once you have that valid E2 status, you're going to be applying for your derivative beneficiary for your spouse. Very important stuff, folks. I mean, this is something that the government does look at those interviews and during those processing. One thing I highly recommend you ultimately schedule a consult with our office and give us a call at 863-370-2427 so that way you know that you're in good hands. Another thing we're going to do is also John Doe, for example. So let's say John Doe is the applicant, that person who's applying. Well, Jane Doe has already provided that I-94 to show that E2 status. Jane Doe has also provided the E2 derivative visa. And Jane Doe has also provided her passport. But you know what's actually as important? John Doe, the primary applicant for this, in this specific example, is also going to have to provide that current passport. They're also going to have to provide that E2 visa, and they're also going to have to provide that I-94 that's going to highlight that E2 status. We have many Mexican nationals that are hardworking business folk that come here and open up businesses and contribute to the U.S. economy, the GDP, and ultimately to the American way of life. And what's really interesting about that is a lot of these Mexican nationals, these Canadian nationals, these South African nationals that we represent, and they come from all around the world with E2s. These are all treaties that have been created by the U.S. government and your home country. What's been very interesting is we've been able to get that for them in record time, and we have those relationships with our offices, with the congressional offices, to get that. So that's really good. And what's really important about you listening in is you're going to have to provide that documentation. Documentation is key. It's evidence. It's primary evidence, and it serves as a way to win and to prove your case in the best way possible to the government. So when USCIS, State Department, all these government entities look at your application, all the background checks you'll have to go through with FBI and IRS and all that, all this is very important. You really need to have an attorney present when this is all going on because you're dealing with multiple government federal agencies. It's not very comparable to other countries just because of the sheer in-depth type of focus that the U.S. government places on the American people, but also to immigrants. And so you as the immigrant applying for that E-2 visa have to be very careful, not only for you, but for your spouse. I mean, this is a derivative application to get that EAD work permit. That's kind of what we're talking about in this video. So that's also important. And then finally, you want the marriage certificate. You have to provide that, right? So we also put the marriage certificate, but with a certified translation. So if you come, I have a client right now currently from Cambodia that we're helping get that done. Cambodia has a different language. It's different characters, different kind of sentences that are made, but there needs to be a certified copy for the translation. So no matter what part of the world or what part of the world you may come from, we have people on our staff who will be able to help you get that certified translation done and in accordance to U.S. law and policy based on statutes, based on regulations, based on administrative policy and the like. So it's very important. And then finally, what we do is we include all that as supporting documentation. We have the cover letter. And then what we do is we literally say something as simple as, thank you for your time and consideration on this matter. Because at the end of the day, the government is the one reviewing this, right? And there's going to be an officer who's going to be reviewing your case. And this is your livelihood. This is your life. And it's very important to our firm. At the end of the day, we want to make sure we win. And from the date of this video, we still have not lost a case yet, and we don't plan on it. We want to make sure you live that American dream. You make sure you stay with your family member, your spouse, and ultimately win. It's always about winning and getting the immigration benefit, but at the same time, doing it in accordance to the law. And so that's very important. And then, so we also put something to the effect of, if you have any questions, right, please do not hesitate to contact us. And then respectfully, Attorney Tripathi, Trip Law, and then we'll ultimately get all that documentation. And that's just one component of the E-2 application, but it's so important because if we do a good job for you on this, which we will, and if you give us the documentation, which you may, then what will end up happening is your spouse will ultimately end up getting that EAD. And that's so amazing because then you can work legally in these great United States of America, have an opportunity to provide for your family, and ultimately pay taxes and set yourself up for a potential green card in the future, which there's going to be other videos on. But that is ultimately what we are trying to do. We're looking at long-term strategy and growth for you as the immigrant because our goal is to make you a citizen. But in order to do that, you first have to get that E-2 visa. Yes, it's a non-immigrant visa, but there's very creative ways to get a green card with an E-2 visa, which we've had other videos on. And then on top of that, once you get the green card, you can then apply for citizenship. So this is a very exciting time to apply for these E-2 visas, but more importantly, to make sure your spouse is very confident and happy that you're going through this. You're already coming here starting a business, but you want to make sure that your spouse is also happy. So he or she should also be happy as well. And at our firm, it's kind of like there's an old saying, when you marry someone, you don't marry that person, you marry their family. In the same way, when you are also helping someone with a visa application such as an E-2, you're not only helping an E-2 person that's the applicant, but you're helping their family. And we are a family-based firm. We love that about what we do, and we wish you the best of luck with your journey as you pursue this E-2. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. My name is Attorney Hardam Tripathi from Trip Law. You can reach out to us at 863-370-2427 on WhatsApp, on text, wherever you're located, you know where to find us. We also are available via email at info@trip-law.com. That's info@trip, the hyphen sign, law.com. And furthermore, we're willing to meet with you and want to help you because this goes beyond just you. It also affects your spouse. So this whole video, we talked about the template. We talked about the requirements of what documents are important in an EAD application, an employment authorization document, aka a work permit for your spouse, what all it entails, and ultimately, more importantly, what is the template? What is the writing on the wall that we have to provide to these officers in the government to make sure you have a best chance of success with respect to your application? So thank you for tuning in. I'm very happy and proud of you listening in right now because this means that you've already taken the first step and you're on your way to getting this E-2 visa, but more so, you're more caring and selfless because you care about also your spouse and you want to see the best life for your spouse as well from an immigration perspective. So thank you for your time. This is U.S. Immigration Attorney Hardin Tripathi from Trip Law, and we really appreciate this nugget that we shared with you, and we look forward to possibly hearing from you so we can continue this conversation and ultimately help you live that American dream. Thank you for your time, and have a great rest of your week.